welcome to Mirage. Today we're going to be speculating on how-to guides. Evan Waterman is joining me. He has not only written a how-to guide, but also you're publishing comics still, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I see Facebook posts all the time about your project. How's it going with that?
Good. Yeah. So the how-to guide, I somewhat recently put out a new version of it, which had a bunch of new stuff about like printing and like distribution and all that kind of stuff of comics. And
Yeah,
I'm
because
still
that's where you
working on,
are, right? You're in
yeah,
distribution mode.
yeah, distribution mode. Yeah. But I'm also still writing a bunch of new comics. Like what I'm working on right now is I've got a horror comic that just came out. I'm working on a short light fantasy comic, a kid's book. My original series, More Than Men. I've got issue 2 and 3 written, and we're just getting ready to start the art on that. And then I've got another one-off story and maybe one more series after that, depending on how much energy I have.
My God, man! So you're full time doing this now.
Yeah. So my plan was I quit my job last month.
Oh, God,
Um,
congratulations.
Well, we'll see how that goes. But I went and I traveled for a while and then came back, and for at least the next few months, it's just straight comics, and just gonna do as much as I can, see how well that pays off, and we'll see where to go from there. But
So it's interesting. Did you get lucky, or did you know what you're doing?
probably a little bit of both.
You think so?
Yeah, it's hard in comics when you're talking about how to break into the industry.
Yeah.
Um, Everyone has a different way, right? There's someone who just wrote a really good story, and all of a sudden, a lot of people looked at it, and then publishers are calling on them. And then there's other people who spent years writing really good stories, but nothing happened, and then they just all of a sudden one of them took off out of nowhere. And then there's other people who are like constantly pestering publishers over and over and over again, and eventually they got in. And there's a lot of
It's
different
interesting.
yeah, a lot of different ways. There's a lot of people who are full time who just self publish their own books, and a lot of people who are full time who write like Spider-Man or uh, not comics that they own, but they're just hired on to write all these stories. There's a lot of different ways in, but I think for me, yeah, it's a combination of both. I think just like luck, and but I found a really good team to
Yeah,
put on
that's
my
interesting
comics.
because you're not just a writer, you're a publisher too. I mean, you're doing the thing. You're distributing stuff.
Yeah. So I
I
I
mean, it's crazy what you're doing. I mean, you've moved beyond. You've honestly said, "What I want to write comics, so I'm just going to make comics."
yeah. It's nice in that I don't have any gatekeepers. It's all just like myself. Like
Yeah,
I want to make this, I do make it, and then I'm in charge of distributing it. Um,
yeah.
it's a lot of work, but it's also rewarding at the same time in that
So,
I
I
have
mean, you wrote a how-to guide, obviously, and that had to have helped because I mean, honestly, the question I want to ask is, did how-to guides actually benefit you in the journey that you found yourself on? I think it was a year. It's been a year, right? Just about since the
yeah
first time that we've talked to each other.
yeah I think so
And
yeah
in that year, you've gone from, hey, I might be doing this to, hey, I'm doing this to, hey, I've already got funded Kickstarter. I
yeah
mean, how unbelievable is that? Now, where are you now? You're two projects deeper into this world of making comic books. And
yeah.
how many people are working for you right now?
Well, I've got artist letterist on More Than Men. I've got an artist on like the short story. I'm currently hiring for a couple more projects, so we'll we'll see where all that goes. But it's crazy. Just like I never would have guessed that this is where I would have ended up a year from now, or even just a few months. But
I know really
yeah,
all you have to do is follow the path that you've already taken, right? I mean, you've
yeah,
got like channels to go through to get things
yeah,
going.
yeah, and
Fascinating, man.
yeah, like you were saying before, the how-to guides.
Exactly. I was
Um,
going to ask. The question is, did how-to guides put you in the place that you are right now, or did writing the how-to guide basically cement it for you? What did it?
Yeah, so when I first started, I wanted to make sure that I was doing everything right. I didn't want to just jump in and have no idea what I was doing. So I spent a lot of time um, researching what it means to write a comic, what makes a good story, what makes good art and lettering and coloring, and I spent hours and hours and hours researching this before I had even done anything, and I had this huge document of just like 60 pages of notes, and then I'm like, well, I came to two realizations. One is that I can take this and turn it into something that helps other people, and two, I'm never going to be finished this. Like I'm never going
Yeah.
to be done learning. But doing that how-to guide, like I think that there's a saying where like you learn the most by teaching others, and by turning that guide into something that other people can use, I think that's what helped me learn the most about comics, and I'm still constantly learning and adding to it and getting feedback on it and sharing with other people. We're sharing our resources, and
Yeah.
it's it's good on multiple levels, I think. So
So you're getting a lot of feedback. You're getting a lot of feedback on the how-to guide that you wrote.
yeah, yeah, there's it's not only is it rewarding to be able to help other people, but it also helps me learn and it also helps me network it's another way of getting myself out there and other people can like you see all these YouTube channels where people doing all these tutorials and stuff, and
Mhm.
they get thousands or millions of views,
Millions, yeah.
and then a lot of them are just like at the end they'll like pull out their book and they'll say, "Hey, this is my book," and so there's
I don't
there,
even notice that part because I'm already irritated. I've got to go through some giant, introduction. Hey, I'm Sam and I do videos on blah, 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 blah. And today I'm going to show you my room and this is my setup and my microphone and my real cool, whatever this is. Like, Sam, bro, you know what? All I really want to know is how to fix what I just broke. Come on, dude.
yeah,
And that turns out not to even be close to the subject matter because Google decided that I was wrong in what I was looking for and sent me
yeah,
down a completely different path.
and
I
that's
hate
what I
Sam and his
yeah.
videos. I hate them. I just want the freaking words, dude. Just give me like a whole paragraph of how to do it and I'm good.
Yeah,
But
and
you know
that's what
what?
that's
I'm
what I
good.
wanted with my guide. Like I
Yeah,
read a
exactly.
lot of guides out there that are really long-winded and they just write and write and write and write. And I said, I'm not even learning anything here. So I wanted mine to be here's the point by point thing of things that I've learned and that you can take and apply to yourself as well. So
How long did
that's
it take? I mean, we were last year we talked, it was already written, right? I mean, you already had, I think it was 90 pages. It was more than that.
yeah, something around that, I think.
Yeah. So what is it now in terms of working
It's
on
at
it?
130, I think.
Okay, so pretty good growth. I mean, how long did it take you to write that first 90 pages?
Oh, it was about a month, I think, where I was doing research and
Just
just
tucking it in there, right? And
yeah, just I wasn't doing anything else. I'm besides working, but I would get home and I would research and add notes and then format it and all that
so
stuff. So
how-tos, I mean, my thinking on that was Stephen King's, On Writing.
yeah,
Did you read
yeah.
that?
I've read sections of it. I've been meaning to read the whole thing, but I've been recommended it
Probably one
multiple
of the best
times.
books, just
Yeah,
on, memoir
yeah,
books on
yeah,
what somebody does. I mean, basically just breaking it down a little bit. It doesn't
yeah,
really, teach you anything really. It just kind of
yeah,
shows you what
yeah,
he did in terms of how do you be Stephen King at the end of the
yeah.
day.
And even no matter how good a how-to guide is, I think that it's never gonna be, you read it and then you're a pro. You know everything there is to know. I think that it's a good start. It's a good way of getting your brain in the mindset of writing, and but a lot of it is just figuring it out yourself. Like, I
It's
can't
interesting though,
I
because you go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, yeah, I can't as much as I wish I could, I can't just write this magic book that is gonna make someone an expert in a field, right?
Yeah,
Like,
because it's
there's no
nebulous, right?
textbook that's gonna teach you everything.
E-
Yeah. Yeah.
Education, learning, it's all kind of like this thing, this net. Sometimes you catch a little bit, sometimes you catch most of it, but you're never really going to catch all of it. It's always like a lifetime pursuit. In terms of writing, I
Yeah.
mean, they say that you're an amateur working your way to being a master, and when you're a master, you never have to really worry about creating a story. It just comes out of you, it just bubbles.
Yeah.
This is the right way to do it.
Yeah.
I imagine, 10,000 hours in, that's what you're doing. Who knows? I
Yeah.
just read a little bit of James Patterson's newest book with Bill Clinton, and the first part is so bad.
Yeah.
But I'm very distracted. I think that's
Yeah.
the problem.
Yeah. Man, that I like James Patterson, and guys like that. I do not understand how they just like spit out that many books.
I
Like,
asked my mom once, and she's one of those people that sits at a kitchen table for hours and just flips the pages of books like that. I said,
yeah,
Mom, what are you getting out of that? And she finishes in like a day. So I
wow.
don't know. What was that about? I don't know. What the hell just happened to you in that book that it disappeared in front of you? You weren't seeing any of it. And I guess that's what James Patterson is, it's a pretty cover, it got words in it, and you can like lose yourself in it.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know. I'm having a hard time finding good stuff now, unfortunately. What are you reading? Anything good? Anything non-comic book, or what's like
Well,
your
yeah, I read mostly comics, but there's I've been recently reading it's Invincible. It's a superhero comic. That one just wrapped up. It's um I think, oh man, I think it's by Robert Kirkman. I think it's the guy who did Walking Dead, but I'm not sure.
Invincible? Name sounds so familiar.
Yeah.
It's probably the
But
same publisher as Saga, right? And Image, or no? Who does that?
it is it's Image, yeah. It is Image. Yeah. What else have I been reading? I've been reading some of the Sandman comics by Neil Gaiman.
Are you going back in time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, Google doesn't think I like comic books because it never populates anything. In fact,
Yeah.
it thinks I want invincible, powerful, all-purpose cleaner. Invincible. Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Skybound Entertainment Image.
Yeah.
Robert Kirkman, Corey
Yeah.
Walker.
Yeah. Yeah, that one I've been recommended. It just wrapped up. It's I don't usually read a lot of superhero comics, but this one I
Hmm.
think is
Well, you wrote a
it's
superhero comic.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
It's
I
weird, man,
wrote
isn't it?
yeah,
Flight of the
my
Phoenix, the New Zealand band said the exact same thing. I think
yeah.
Flight of the Phoenix. They said they hate comic fans, hate them, will never go see them. They're like regarded as the best. So I mean,
Well, I used to read a lot of like superhero stuff in the like the old school. Like I have some of my old grandfather's comics, like the really old like superhero stuff, and that was one of my inspirations. And another big inspiration for me was Watchmen by Alan Moore.
yeah,
And that's kind of like it's almost a meta book about superheroes. And it's
yeah, it's really good. It reminded
yeah,
me of no, I'm sorry, Cavalier and Clay
right?
won Pulitzer like midway through like 2002ish,
Yeah.
and I think when I finally got to the Watchmen, it reminded me of that book.
Yeah.
Very kind of dated superhero
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. And I like that's the kind of stuff I like. I like where it takes a genre and in comics, you've got like Marvel and DC. Those are the big two. They sell like together like over half of all the comics, and they pretty much do only superhero stuff. But when you have something like Watchmen that takes the superhero and it turns it into something else, that's something that's really interesting to me. It turns it into a question about superheroes and about the world, and
Yeah,
that's kind of the stuff that I like about mine. Like I'm always hesitant to call More Than Men my comic. I'm hesitant to call it a superhero comic because it is. There's superheroes in it and they fight stuff, but a lot of it isn't what you would traditionally see as a superhero story. It's more political. It's more about the world, about characters and kind of a deconstruction of what the genre is. So that's kind of the books that I really like reading. Like those are a lot of the Alan Moore books, like Watchmen or V for Vendetta, and
I've never really, not since I was a kid. When I was
yeah,
younger, I obviously loved Spider-Man. I still do love Spider-Man,
yeah,
honestly. It's my
yeah,
favorite comic book superhero.
yeah,
So basically, recently I've discovered that you could find, entire collections on the internet. So of course I downloaded it and just started from one, read my way through the entire thing, and
yeah,
learned that, Spider-Man works in these arcs, like 5 or 6 issues, and then something he wins and then goes on to something else. I mean, it always
definitely,
starts over again. I mean, it's a brilliant concept, right? I mean, I love
yeah,
the arc where Spider-Man died.
yeah, yeah. I used to. I think it was even just a few months ago. I was never a fan of those really long running arcs because I wanted a fulfilling story and like a one that starts and then ends. But
Yeah,
I listened to a podcast where they were talking about how there's different types of stories. There's the miniseries like Watchmen, which goes for 12 issues and then it's done. And but then the ongoing ones, it's a different kind of story. There's the underlying theme that carries throughout the whole story, but they have, like you just said, the mini arcs that go through so that you can jump into the series whenever you want, and you can follow a mini arc, and then you can still get that satisfying ending. It's really interesting how different types of stories are choreographed and put together differently to provide like different things. Like
Yeah. How often do you publish an issue of the oh god,
so
dude. What's
more
what
than
do you
more well, my comic is More Than Men, like my original one. So we're publishing this one slowly, but um, I would guess one issue every few months.
a few
Every
months.
like
Okay.
the big publishers, they'll publish an issue a month or every 2 months. So I'm aiming to average about every three.
What do you when you're when you're consuming a comic book? I mean, for me, I had all of the back issues. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
can, unfortunately, whatever you could find all the stuff, and it's like you just read through these little bits of comic per issue. You're done so quickly, like 10 pages long,
yeah,
and you
yeah,
make your readers wait months for the next issue. You know,
yeah,
regular Marvel and DC, they make their readers wait a month. I mean, it seems ridiculous
yeah,
that you
and
retain interest in these characters. I mean, these arcs are so like they will last a year. They're only 12 issues, but I mean, you have to wait a whole month.
yeah, it's interesting how there's a lot of people who are there's kind of like a movement that against that now, where they're saying, well, why do we have to do it in these issues? Why do we have to do these things in once a month? And
Yeah, it's like
there's like
write
lots
the
of
whole damn thing and then publish it, right?
yeah, but there's like movement towards web comics where they release a page every or 3 pages a week, and it's just kind of throughout. Or there's ones that are more extreme where they have an entire book and they just make it and then they release it all at once. And I guess it all comes down to the person producing it. Like, are you the kind of person who can either afford or has the patience to do it all at once and bring it out,
Yeah.
or are you or because a lot of first time creators it's encouraged to write a shorter story or just a single issue just to be able to get like one arc together within like one book, like 20 to 30 pages, get an arc, but there's an underlying arc that's going to continue throughout the series, like each
Now,
issue.
obviously, you had that studied before starting.
Yeah, yeah. I tried to as much as I could, but like I said before, I'm still always learning, and I I try to have each issue since it comes out so infrequently. I try to have each issue feel like a satisfying conclusion, but not s- the entire story concluded. Or so it leaves you satisfied but still wanting more. And I think that's the goal with like a lot of like the ongoing series, because those have been going for how many years? Like how long has Spider-Man been going for? So long, right?
63, man, right? I
Yeah,
mean, that young, that late, I mean, that long ago.
yeah. So
What are we looking at
they're
here? Like 60 years almost? Almost?
something crazy like that. They have
55
to
now? Yeah,
make
that's
every
crazy.
single issue, every single little book, like 20 something pages. It has to um, be satisfying enough so that the reader doesn't feel like they're ripped off, but also has to feed into the next one. It's interesting to me how like the art of it.
Yeah, what's the cult or what's the culture of a comic book? Say, I mean, obviously you've got more than one book, so maybe that'll sustain you. When I looked into it a little bit, recently I was reading like two or three at a time. I was doing like what is it, The Walking Dead, and then Image had another one, Lewis and Clark traipsing across doing their trail deal, and there's a whole bunch of fantasy stuff going on. It was so fascinating.
Yeah,
It was such a great book, but I mean, at least I had two. You know what I mean? three
yeah,
dollars a pop. I mean, six
yeah,
dollars for two books that you're done with in like 5 minutes. What do
yeah.
you do with that book for the rest of the month? Do you study it? I mean, are you looking at it, or does it just go in a box, in a little
Well,
baggie? And
yeah. A lot of people just come in. They have like if you're talking about like DC or Marvel comics, they put out a few different issues in a month. So they let's say they have like 6 different books that you're reading. So you go and you get one a week. So you don't feel like you're waiting on the next one because you have a different series that you're reading at the same time. So they hook you in by giving you more stories that all somewhat tie into each other, and so every week you've got something else, something else, something else, and then at the start of the next month you've got that original story again, the next one, and they just keep. So you've always got something to read, and when I like I said, I had a problem with that originally because it felt like, well, this is where's this going? It's just they're just trying to keep you hooked long enough to
Yeah,
read the next one. But I mean, I
get
guess
the
that
next
is what they're
one.
doing. But like,
That's
I've
100% what they want, right? I mean, they don't want you to have any doubts about wanting to read that next installment.
yeah,
They want
and
you
then
100% on board with them. Like, give it
yeah,
all the money. Here you go. It's my wallet's upended. Give me the book now.
and that's the way it's worked for years, right? But it's
Yeah.
interesting to see how now there's publishers like Image who are slowly creeping up, and Image, they have creator-owned stories. So the stories are owned by the creators, they're set at their own pace, they're not necessarily like these always never-ending arcs. Like a lot of them, like, one of the most famous comics out there right now is Saga. It's they've said that they have an ending in mind. They're writing it like 50 or
Oh, yeah. I
something
really
issues,
like
and
that a lot. I'm so
it
back,
ends.
though. I've stopped reading it at this
Yeah.
moment in time, but it's so freaking good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how I'm not gonna call it a revolution, but it's trends are slowly changing into, more publishers, more creator-owned stories, and more start and finish stories. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects the market and how that affects people buying comics. But
It's like these kids that grew up wanting to make film. I mean, here's a medium that you could actually get into and create those type of stories, those very visual stories that flow with a bunch of people. You know what I mean? I talked to
yeah,
a guy who really wanted to rewrite the Star Wars prequels. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I'm going to make those
yeah,
movies. I sent them your way,
yeah,
but he was it's like that idea is ripe for comic books. You know
yeah,
what I mean? You don't have to put the Star Wars logo on it, but you can just tell that story. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Let it
definitely.
filter out. That's what you're intending it to be, or something along
Yeah,
those lines. I mean, it's brilliant. And then somebody like you, if you're passionate about a project like that, you can make it happen. You can make it live, and that's ingenious. I mean, that's
yeah,
really cool. But also, you're producing clean stuff quickly.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how, like, all the different, like, ways you can take it. Like, I originally thought, "Okay, I'm gonna make More Than Men, I'm gonna write the series, I'm gonna release it, and then it's gonna be over." But then I I
You,
had
why
this
would you even
delay.
start it if you wanted it to be over with it that
Yeah.
quickly, right?
Yeah, yeah, and then we had this delay, and it gave me time to think, and I'm like, "Okay, well, what am I doing with this?" And then so I have these other stories, and some of them are short stories, they're 8-page stories, and that's it, and some of them are one-offs, so they're a single book, and that's it, but then there's other ones that carry off into a series, and so I always thought I would be the kinda writer who would write a miniseries, 6 issues, and then done. But
Yeah.
then, like, there's so many different venues, so many different approaches you can take to writing comics, and I've just being in it for even just this 1 year has taught me a lot about how the value of them, whether or not I agree with how they're done, but the value of the different approaches.
I wonder. I write in short fiction form, novel form. When you write a page short story, or when you write a short, you're writing obviously in comic book format.
Yeah, so it's similar to a movie script in that
Okay.
I'll
Do you
write
have
a page and I'll have a panel description in the dialogue. Yeah.
do
I
you
can I
have software for it?
I usually write in Google Docs, but there is software for it. There's actually a Kickstarter for one that funded really well and that they're developing specifically for comics. But I like to write in Google Docs because it lets me just share it with people and I can write it on my phone too. And but yeah,
I can't write on my phone on Google
yeah,
Docs. I don't know what the deal is.
yeah.
Like I can
It's
put on stories on Reddit. Like I
yeah,
can write long, 1,000-word stories and post them on Reddit with no problem at all. But I cannot write in Google Doc on my phone.
yeah, yeah. It's tough. It's tough. I usually keep a notebook with me. Like
Okay.
when I went on a road trip last month, and I wrote a lot of these stories that, like some of the shorts and one of the one I'm planning on turning into a miniseries, I wrote them just on the road trip in a notebook. So, it's there's a lot of it's interesting, there's so many different approaches to, like, just, like, writing, like, wasn't even planning on writing these stories. I just got inspiration, then wrote an 8-pager in like 3 days, and then you refine it and then turn it into a script, and there you go, right?
I mean, ultimately, you're doing what every writer, every content producer wants is putting stuff in front of people who are consuming it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I mean, that's the most impressive part.
Yeah. There's a lot of marketing that goes into it, which I've always hated marketing, the marketing side of things. Like I've always wanted to just say, "Here's a story. I wrote it, and then now read it." But that's just not gonna work.
Well, I'm even
So
less than that. Is what I did with my first novel is just put it on Amazon and wait to be famous.
yeah, I mean I wish it worked like
Right.
that.
Here, here's my novel world. Where's my freaking Pulitzer? I'm waiting already.
Yeah,
These these
there's
stats must be completely wrong. Obviously, 0 can't be the right answer. It must be many zeros and a 1.
yeah, yeah.
No,
So
so, I mean, what does a week look like in terms of marketing for this thing? What's a month look like? I mean, what's more concise? What's the better way to look at it? Or
yeah, so
daily for
there's
that matter?
it depends on the person. There's a lot of people who tour their books around, so they go from convention to convention, um, maybe like one a month. Some people do more, but like
At this point, I
that's a
like
lot.
conventions, but that is a lot of conventions.
Yeah, it's a lot. Like then they tour their books around and they sell them to people. These are the people who are self-distributing. They're self-publishing their books. Um, so they'll tour to conventions. They'll market online. They'll gather an email list. And for me, I'm just entering that world of. I went to my first local convention last week actually, and sold. I was selling More Than Men, and I think that's there's a lot of people who just sell through conventions, but there's
Yeah.
other people who don't go to conventions at all, and they just sell online, and then they market themselves online through social media and through their email list. Um, it's interesting how even in the marketing side of things, there's a bunch of different approaches you can take.
I
And
mean,
of course you can
obviously, I'm listening to you talk and thinking to myself, "Oh my god, I don't wanna live in my freaking car. When am I gonna write?"
yeah. Yeah, so if conventions aren't for you, like, if you don't wanna, like, go around and, like, sell stuff, like, for me, I love just like you, I love just sitting and writing, and then
I
so
mean, I don't mind the occasional, like, I'm really hoping I can parlay this podcast into, like, a press badge to get get into conventions
that
and
would be
stuff.
awesome, that would be
That would be
awesome.
really fantastic, and maybe
Yeah,
even get on panels that way
yeah,
without having a publisher.
yeah,
Just having this effort kinda launch me into that arena and then say, "Blah, this is what I've got.
yeah. Yeah, and
Listen to me, I'm an expert. Ha,
yeah,
ha, ha."
yeah, it's interesting. It used to be that the only way to really get into comics was you would, find a publisher, find an editor, and just, like, chase them down and give them your manuscript or give them your comic. And now with the digital world, you could still do that, but you can also go stay online strictly. Like I know a lot of people who don't ever go to conventions. They don't ever seek out people. They just go online and they market themselves and they brand themselves. And once they eventually get big enough, then people
Yeah.
approach
But
them,
then again,
right?
I know people who are gigantic, like Nerdist. I mean,
Yeah,
Nerdist, the
yeah,
YouTube
yeah,
channel and, whatever you have. Yeah, I don't have to guess it's a YouTube channel or a website.
yeah,
But Jessica Chobane goes to every single freaking con there is if you watch
yeah,
that show.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
and
Every time there's a con, and that's a
yeah,
gigantic content producer, not just,
yeah,
some dude
yeah,
writing a short story or
yeah.
novel here and there.
There's definitely the flip side of that where there's people that they network completely in person and they go around and they talk to people and but what I really think it like boils down to is about the people you know, and it's about,
Yeah.
um, if you
Oh, God,
can
I'm with you there.
yeah, if you can go to a convention, find an editor, and talk them down, then that is huge for you. But now with the digital world, you can also do that online. Now, like it's less personal, but I know people who do that. I've been trying to force myself into like the real world, like go to conventions and talk to people and stuff, because I think that's probably the best way to get to know people and meet people. But like, there's still lots of people who just stick
Right.
purely
I
online and
really
like
do enjoy going to conventions. I went to BookCon
yeah,
just a month ago. I think it was May. God, man, I don't even know. And
yeah,
just walked around. It wasn't that big. It was at Javits.
Yeah.
where they do New York City Comic Con,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just walked around. And I talked to a few people about the podcast, but there were not a lot of people there, unfortunately. But
Mhm.
anyway, like you said, it was like press and flesh. You got to meet somebody. I had some really great conversations. I have a couple podcasts lined up from people I met face to face,
Yeah.
and it's interesting what else you could kind of do there.
Yeah.
Pissed off some Scientologists. They wanted to sell.
Well,
I picked up a copy of what was that bad John Travolta movie?
oh, you're gonna have to be more specific.
Battle.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about. That alien one?
yeah, the alien one, Battle for Planet, whatever the hell, Scientologist. I picked that up for 1 second. They're like, "You should buy that." I said, "I saw the movie. It sucked." They're like, "It's much better than the movie." I was like, "I doubt that." I put it down. They were like staring at me hatefully, and I always put like fiction into their contests. And
Yeah.
now I'm afraid they know
Yeah.
where I live.
They're out to get you now.
Scientologists are scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotta
But I
stay.
mean, yeah, man, I'm totally about the con, but I don't want to do it all the time either. It
Yeah.
feels like that would be exhausting and expensive. I mean, if you were
Yeah.
benefiting, like in terms of, making the con money back plus, that would be a different story. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Some of these people who just do booths, it seems like they just sit there and languish for hours on
Yeah,
end.
and I don't want to make it seem like it's one of the extremes. Like you have to go to all the cons or none of the cons. There's a lot of people in the middle. It's a spectrum, right? You could go to 3 cons a year and still network with people, meet people, but still have all the time to
Do stuff, yeah. But you say
stuff.
cons, do cons
Yeah.
as
Well,
often as possible.
yeah.
I mean, how many cons are you going to do? How many cons are you planning?
See, this
What
is my
words do
first
I
year.
want to say? How many
So,
cons do you have planned? Like, how many cons have you done, and how many cons do you plan on doing going forward?
yeah, so I'm aiming to
Oof.
do like as like my first year with multiple stories. I'm aiming to do like a lot of the local cons. So I'm hoping to be in Seattle for ECCC. I'm doing the Vancouver cons. There's a couple I'm doing. Well, hopefully Fan Expo, and then there's VanCaf next year, and potentially some of the um ones in like Calgary and Edmonton. So
Are you going to do a booth?
yeah, I was hoping to. Yeah.
Wow, that's not cheap.
No, when it comes to, like, booths, depending on the con, they go from, like, 100 something to, like, 300 something. Um, oh, unless you're going to, like, New York Comic Con and you're paying, like, 1,000 something.
Are you? Because I was going to say, I wonder how much that
No.
is. I know
No,
people.
I'm not
I
going to New
can't
York.
believe people do
Not
that
yet,
shit.
not yet, at least. Yeah, I wanna test the waters a little first before I jump into New York. Um, but yeah, a lot of people um, have suggested to me, they say, like, when I first just had More Than Men and I had some of the posters, and they said, "That's enough. Just go to some of the local cons and just get your name out there, get people seeing your stuff." Um, but I wanted to have a little bit more. I wanted to have, now that I have, More Than Men and I have another story, I have some posters, some prints, some stickers, and I have, this another kid's book in the works, and I have another short story coming out hopefully before that the first convention. I'm hoping that'll be enough to just like kind of get me out there and just I think most people, like a vast majority of people, make the money back at cons, regardless of how much you got or how little you got. I think if you're tabling, most people make their money back, at the
I
very
mean, as long as
least.
you're
Yeah,
being available to the people that are walking by, right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I saw a lot of depressed people on Sunday. That's when I
yeah,
went on Sunday. They were
yeah,
looking at their desk, playing with their phones, not looking up. Their books were like, yeah, whatever. They're there.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's got to be so
Yeah,
disheartening. I don't know. It's got to be
yeah,
so hard. You got to be
it's
on it the entire
yeah,
time.
it's hard for people, especially I don't know, a lot of artists and creators are, like, super introverted, so it's hard for them, and me included, to put themselves out there, put myself out there and get people, like, coming to the table, but I
Aren't you an
learned.
athlete though? I mean, do you think that? I mean, you did athletics in school, didn't you? Or at least you
Yeah,
traveled
yeah,
enough.
I played some sports, I did martial arts,
So
and
you know what it feels like to die inside and still have to keep lifting your feet and continue moving forward. I mean, it's like that's what it is in a way, right?
Yeah.
I used
Yeah,
to
so,
work, I did like once just for a very short amount of time before I pissed off my manager and got fired. work for the Maury Povich show, and there was
Yeah.
one element of my job that I had to go out on the streets of Midtown, right by Madison Square Garden, and get people to come to the show when they couldn't fill up the stadium,
Mhm.
the little
Yeah.
auditorium or whatever.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just going up to strangers and saying, "Come see a Maury Povich show." And I have
Mm.
a feeling that's kind of like what being at a con is like. You go up to somebody and say, "Hey, I've got this comic book. Would you like to check it out?" And you've got to have the biggest balls in the world and just, I guess, blinders on to what normal behavior is, and just like plow forward.
Yeah, I guess it depends.
Successful.
It depends on the con, right? There's a lot of cons where that you see the main attractions. If you look like at the guest list and it's all movie and TV stars and that kind of stuff, you're probably gonna get a lot of people who aren't necessarily interested in comics going. But there's shows like VanCaf or TCAF where it's directly for comics, and at those shows you have people just coming up to your tables and talking to you and interested in comics and loving it. And a lot of people I talk to say that is the best show that they've ever been to, even though it's a one of the smaller shows. They
Conventions now are more fan oriented, aren't they? But
Yeah,
I mean, the
yeah,
nature of a con though is I've got business, you've got business. Let's be in the same place at the same time and conduct our business together.
yeah, yeah. And that's a hard thing for a lot of creatives to do. It's like a lot of people, their mindsets in the I want to write a cool story and not I want to sell you this product sort of thing. And that's the next thing actually that I want to focus on my guide, because I go to this comics group with a lot of other comics creators. It's a local thing and I get so much good advice about how to table and how to convention by people who have been doing it for years. And
Yeah.
it's it's really just here are some tips, here are some things you can do, and it's about like practicing these things and getting yourselves out there. It's That's why there's people who do it for their jobs. Like there's things you can do to help you market better, like, and I want people to not have to be afraid of doing that, because it's as much as I love to just write, and if you want to be like self-published, this is something you have to do. You have to just jump into it, and it's
Yeah, the
super
business
uncomfortable
thing,
for me,
man,
but like,
totally makes me uncomfortable. I
yeah.
mean, it's not fair, honestly, because I mean, don't you consider it punching down? You're Canadian. You get all these advantages, comic book clubs, awesome leadership, great, legalization of medicines
Yeah.
and whatnot. I mean, you're
Oh,
just
I
getting
think we're just like
everything.
legalizing marijuana throughout the country now.
I know, dude, that's crazy. When do you guys, what does it go, when does it go in to
I
effect?
think
Or
it's
is
like
it, that doesn't
next
matter at
week
this
or
point?
something.
What's that?
I think it's like next week.
Really?
I think
That's crazy.
so.
I mean, I don't know, dude. The world is so crazy. We're
Yeah.
locking freaking kids up on the border of my country,
Yeah.
and you guys are free enough to just be adults.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I
ultimately,
mean, Canada's also a lot smaller, right?
that's true.
There's
What's your population? 20 million? 25?
oh, I don't
30?
know off the top of my head. It's the population of California, the
Oh,
state.
100 million? I
Yeah.
don't know. I got this thing called the internet. Have you heard of it?
No.
I would check it out if I were you. It actually might help you with your business of comic book developing.
Yeah, let me give that a Google.
Canada.
Population of Canada, 36
I
million.
knew something like that.
Yeah,
And
so
you're
less
all
than
like
California.
congregated right down there on the border with America.
Yeah. Yeah, there isn't a
McDonald's,
whole lot up
Bunnings.
north.
I
So
think we can do I think we could do what you do here. I
you think you
think it's
could be
possible.
Canada?
I think we could be like Canada Junior. We could
Oh,
have
if I
universal
know
health
America,
care.
America is not gonna be junior in anything. They have to be Canada number 1.
Yeah, it's true. We're Canada number one. All you have to say is we're Canada number first. You know, I love the fact that you guys are still connected to the throne of England, the crown
Yeah.
or whatnot.
Yeah.
I think that's totally freaking cool. And I wish we had just said we want to be, we want a prime minister,
Yeah.
and then we'd get a Trudeau, and then you
Yeah.
guys have freaking Trump.
Yeah,
I,
that's all you gotta do. Just gotta
I
switch
can't
the
believe his
names and
wife
everything.
showed up at the border with that jacket on. Did you see the story?
Yeah, I did.
My
Yeah.
God, man, I don't understand. It's like we're living
Yeah.
in a comic book, and I wish whoever was writing it would just stop.
Yeah.
It's not cool anymore.
I was when I was writing More Than Men, I was writing things where I'm like, no, because I wanted it to be realistic, and I was writing things like, no, that would never happen. And then the elections happened, and then we got like a year of Trump now, and then everything's changed. I'm like, well, anything's possible now. Like all those things that I said weren't realistic before were totally realistic.
I just don't understand why there wasn't violence to protect those children. I almost feel like there should have been. Like that should have been the rift. That should
Yeah.
have set people off. I mean, yeah, you're jailing children
Mm.
is up there with, killing innocent people with guns. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, yeah, that's what you write about, isn't it? You write about the class distinction, and that's
Yeah.
really cool. I mean, you're given an opportunity to kind of explore if a supervillain was president of the United States of America.
Yeah. So that's what I like. My underlying goal is trying to get people to think more about concepts I care about. Like the most recent story I'm writing, it's about how we don't use jails anymore because they're too expensive and too overpopulated. So instead of criminalizing or jailing criminals, they get branded on their neck with a mark and then just thrown back in the streets. And those people that get thrown in the streets, they don't have rights anymore. So you can do whatever you want. Lots of restaurants won't serve them. They won't get
So
jobs.
fascinating, man. I wrote a novel where there's like two sections of population, the haves and the have-nots, basically.
Yeah,
And obviously, the have-nots can't get into where the haves are, and the haves would never want to go into the slums or whatever. Never
yeah,
thought of a brand as to separate them as to who they were.
yeah,
Very, very fascinating as an idea.
yeah,
Tattoos or something along those lines, like scarring.
yeah. And that's the kind of stuff that I really love. I love ideas, concepts like that I think are important that I think that people need to talk about more. But
We
I
kind
wanted
of
to,
have that with the obesity epidemic, don't we? I mean,
yeah,
in terms of like branding somebody as impoverished, I mean, you do nothing more than that by being just gigantic and
yeah,
round. I mean,
yeah.
it just like calls attention to your fact that you
And
can't afford
yeah,
to do anything
and
but
I
eat
think
crap.
that's the advantage that comics have. They have, like, the imagery, like, the visuals, and by
Yeah,
taking a concept and turn it into, like, a captivating a story with something with, like, a visualization, something that you can immediately gain impact from, I
yeah.
think that draws people to the story, and I think that's what's interesting to me, like, it's a way of getting people interested in a concept that I'm interested in, but doing it in an interesting way, in a way that makes people at the same time entertained, but also stimulates the brain, gets them thinking about stuff, and that's what really inspires me to write and make my stories.
What's really cool to me, I mean, to steal it back to my direction, because obviously this is my show and I'm going to be
Yep,
egotistical about
you have
everything.
the authority.
But what's so cool about this is that, when I talk to artists in the past about doing comics or whatever, they say, pay me. That's the first thing they
Mhm.
said, pay me. How much is it going to be? I mean, I want my rate or whatever it's going to be. I
Yeah,
couldn't find anybody willing to say, okay, fine, I'll pen 10 pages for you because I want the exposure too. And that's basically what you kind of did. You said, I'm doing this for free. You're going to do this for free. We're all going to do this for free. And at the end of the day, we're going to be better off for it.
yeah, but it's yeah,
It's
it's
communism,
interesting. Yeah, there's a lot
straight
of
up
people.
socialism, bro. How do you feel
Yeah,
about
yeah, but
that?
on the flip side of it, there's a lot of people who are trying to um this is like their job. Like
Yeah,
drawing is their job and they're like, "Well, I need and I don't know who you are and whether or
so
not your story is
cutthroat.
going to be successful. So if I draw 100 pages for you,
Yeah.
then and it's a flop, then I didn't get paid that month or something." And I think it's a
Talk to a
problem.
few artists, man. I mean, that's a
Mm,
job and a half. If you've got a career developed, you've gotten like people in your pocket, relationships built up. They'll come to
yeah.
you and offer you work. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't afford to take on other projects. But then there
Yeah.
are new kids coming onto the scene who don't have that
Yeah.
inside track. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think it's gone.
I definitely think like the bigger you get, the more you get, the more people trust you, the more opportunities you'll have. So it's just a matter of getting up there, getting to that point, and then yeah, but yeah,
But the
it
world is
would
very filled with these people who can do this amazing work. I mean,
yeah,
if you're ever on Deviant or
yeah,
the other one, I can't remember what the other one's called. But I always go to both art space, something like that. I can't remember.
mhm,
But there's some really freaking awesome artwork out there.
yeah, and
It's incredibly beautiful and it makes me want to write fiction. You know what I mean? I go there, look
yeah,
for reasons to write fiction.
yeah, yeah, And there are a lot of people who are looking to just collaborate who are with someone. I see a lot of Kickstarters where it's just two people with the dream and one of them writes, one of the other one draws. And I think that's my ideal situation. Like the ideal is two people super passionate about something and just coming together and making it. And but at the same time, people have to eat. They gotta make money.
Yeah.
And it's the harsh reality of it.
I mean, your
But
first step on this process is selling the idea to somebody who's going to draw it for you.
yeah.
When you mentioned the horror project that you're developing, I was curious what the elements were. Do you want? Are you able to go over it at
Yeah,
all?
so the horror one, that's set in the same world as the tattoo one. So that was kinda like my test for that world. Like, I wanted to write a little story just to test the waters with that world. And that one, it's set in a restaurant, um, but the twist is that,
You want to give it away?
should I?
I don't know, man.
Maybe I shouldn't.
Like, I mean, let's.
I guess people can check out the ending of that one. It's free to read for anyone who wants to read it, but,
Well, that's really freaking cool. So you're giving them away for free too.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so the hook on that one is it's a restaurant that's more than meets the eye. It's more than what you'd think it would be. But it's I wanna write something that's like a quick hook, something that's interesting to me, because I think that it's really evocative, like, as a horror, like, it's kinda jarring maybe, or, something that you immediately get an impression of right away, and it's just 8 pages long. But yeah, it's something I wanted to experiment with, like, a shorter story like that, and it's nice to be able to just write it up in a few days and just put it out there and have people reading it.
But it's not a comic book.
It is, yeah, it
Oh,
is.
it is. And I can see it on your website.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna go there now, evanwaterman.com. It's
Evan
crazy. I
J.
realized
Waterman.
also, I had that opportunity to speak with Blackman, and I have an opportunity to speak with Hardman, and I'm
Yeah.
speaking with Waterman. And I would imagine that all of you are from Canada, and for some reason you just like man at the end of all of your names, just to make sure that nobody's confused.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but
Comics.
yeah.
Go ahead.
The comic's called Rebirth, and the tagline
Oh,
is, "Welcome to Rebirth Labs, an upper-class establishment whose true purpose is more sinister than it appears."
who drew it? The same dude from the before.
And no, the guy who drew it was, Jomar Soriano.
Where's he from?
Um, he might, be from the Philippines.
Oh, the Philippines. Oh,
I
okay.
think so.
I like his art. I like the fact
Yeah,
that it's black and white too. Oh, there he
yeah.
is. Deviant art. Well, why did you not take me to his profile page, dude? And you took me away from the comic? That's not cool. But that's awesome, man. So what's the next step for you? I wanted to get into details. In terms of the marketing, I think we get stuck on cons because the subject really is very interesting to me. I
Mhm,
want to go to more cons. You know what I mean? I want to interact with more people creating stuff. You know what I don't want to do is talk to booth girls at all in any
mhm,
capacity. One little bit. I just don't. I mean, yeah, they're fine, whatever, but they're distracting, right? And it's not really ultimately what I want to do. I want to get beyond them and talk to the people that are actually doing the work. And I mean, that's the first question: Is this your work? And most of them say no. And that's
mhm.
not
Yeah.
good. Do you hire people to talk to the public?
No, so what a lot of independent creators do, they go to something called Artist Alley, and it's where it's just like a strip in most cons where they have, like, smaller tables, and, it's all creators selling their own stuff, and that's where I go straight to, and where I plan on selling my stuff from, because you're just interacting straight with the creators and they're selling their own stuff. But if you're going to like a publisher, like a big name publisher,
It's not going to be
um,
anybody but booth girls there.
yeah,
Dude, this is the best idea I've ever seen in my life. So you have Rebirth, a short horror comic available for free,
mhm.
but you offer the opportunity for them to donate if they want to.
Yeah, yeah, it's really nice. I use Gumroad, so what they do, um, they have it built into them where you can charge a price and allow for people to donate more on top of that. So I could set mine for $0, or you could set whatever you want. Um, and you can have like discount codes, and so I can. It's really easy for people who are selling their own stuff to just put it up on their website, or they don't even need a website. You just link to your Gumroad page straight up. Um, but it's like what I was saying before, how the industry is kind of changing a little bit, and that
I'm
you
sitting
still
here
have the big
thinking,
two.
I need
But
to take more notes so I can put more notes in the thing. And I'm like, dude, just write down, what is it? Gumroad?
yeah,
Gumroad,
Gumroad. Yeah,
ROAD.
yeah, and I can link to a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about in this
Sure, that'd be
podcast.
cool. Absolutely. Anything you could think of that you've discovered lately. I mean, definitely I'll link to your how-to guide. I think
Yeah,
that's pretty impressive and awesome that you're giving back like that too.
yeah.
Um,
So one of my marketing
yeah.
strategies has been I've like up until now where I'm just starting to enter like the convention scene,
Mhm.
I've been like strictly digital, like online marketing, so like social media and that kind of stuff. But my main goals have been building up an email list. So what I try to do is I try to hook people in with something for free. So I have More Than Men, which is the first issue of it. You can either buy it straight up, or you can sign up to my email list and I'll give it to you for free. And it's the same thing with Rebirth, this 8-page comic. This one I want it to be for free, so like people come in, it's something that I'm giving them, and they check it out, and then they'll be getting an email from me that says thank you for checking it out. Here's a link to my email sign up if you're interested in getting more. You can get another free comic and you can get a discount code. And so it's not just saying buy my comic. It's saying, "Hey, did you like this free thing? Do you want another free thing?" But I'm actually getting something back by getting their emails so I can message them later about new things that come out. And strategies like that have like I've been focusing mostly on that this year marketing wise, and I've doubled my email list size.
Yeah, emails are interesting, right? Because I mean, obviously I have a few email addresses. One of them only my wife hits up, you know,
Yeah.
only family or whatever.
Yeah.
The one associated with my podcast, which I'm only looking for either rejection letters from publishers or, responses back from people who have offered to be on the podcast or who are going to be on the podcast or whatnot. Then I
Yeah.
have a junk email address, that I give all that stuff to.
Yeah.
And I hardly ever look at it anymore. And it's totally filled with stuff just like that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, how do you
Yeah.
stick out with that as the marketing? But me, I've got like, dude, you go ahead and have that email address. I'll take your comic, but I'm
Yeah.
never
And
going to see
yeah.
what you're sending me.
There's obviously like I don't go into it saying I'm giving this out for free because I need you to give me your email address. And I'm not under the illusion that every single person that who gives me their email, I'm going to be getting a sale from them in the future. But one, I think it's good to give back to people, and giving to people incentivizes them to give back to you more. Um, but it's email lists I've found, and talking to other people who have been in the industry for a while, self-publishing, they gain way more click-through rates of people looking at them and then coming through and buying stuff than any other social media. And that's because it sends out directly to you, as opposed to you scrolling
Yeah,
through a news
there's
feed of like
sites
Twitter or
like BookBub where you can buy a portion of their email list. I mean, go in and say, "Hey, will you email my book to your followers?" And they'll say, "No, it sucks,"
yeah.
or "Okay, but it's going to cost like $400." All right, right? I mean, that's the option, or you could do it your way. And I assume it's working because that was what you were going with last time too, collecting email addresses.
Yeah, yeah, and that's been my focus, this year. I know a lot of my friends who really go into it, and they enter these, like, email list contests. So, you send out an email to your email list, and you say, "Hey, there's a contest. If you sign up for the contest, you can win $100 worth of books." And everyone who signs up to the contest gets their email shared with everyone else's email list. And a lot of people do that, and they like get boom like 1,000 subscribers to their email list instantly. And that's 1,000 people who are gonna get an email straight to them whether or not they look at it who knows? But even if you get, let's say, 10% of people looking at it, that's like 100 people who are looking directly at your emails.
Yeah. I
But
guess I kind of
mm,
treat Twitter in the same way too,
yeah,
where you'll hit like a big fish up for a sarcastic comment, and they'll retweet you or like you or something. I still get like tweets off of this thing I mentioned a year ago about Nazis, and every day there's always some Nazi comment in
yeah,
my inbox. I'm like, Jesus Christ, people. And you're
yeah,
Nazis. Nazis are dead. Make a different name. Come on. This is so dumb.
yeah,
Um yeah,
yeah.
so yeah, I totally get that, but man, getting those emails is really impressive. There was at one time, I'd write a flash piece on WordPress, and somebody would respond, and I'd have their email address. I have like hundreds of email addresses of these people who didn't say, here's my email address, but I have them because they responded to something on WordPress. You know
Mm,
what I mean? So I'm looking
yeah.
at these emails going, I'd like you to watch my podcast or listen to my podcast, but I really just don't want to use your email address without permission.
Yeah, especially with like these new rules in the EU, they're like really going hardcore on email list regulations and all that kind of stuff. So you got to be careful. But yeah, there's a lot of people who like hear the kind of things that we're talking about, like marketing and email lists and conventions, and it's repulsive. And I was definitely like that when I first started because a lot of artists don't want to do that. They do want to just grab their stuff and then have it be read by people. But yeah, it's hard because it doesn't really work like that unless you're really, really lucky. And
Well, I mean,
that's not
organically, I mean, just have a feeling that, I mean, don't know about comic books because obviously you've got to work this in a certain way, and people are expecting a certain quality with comic books as well. That
Mhm,
only comes from being able to say that you enjoy comic books, right?
mhm,
If you take somebody who's writing fiction, I mean, you have so many different avenues. I have two finished novels now, and a novella on its way to being done any day. I'm thinking next week or whatever. But the
mhm,
more work I write, the more places I can send it to potentially publish it. I'm
yeah,
not signing any contracts except for that particular piece of writing. And if I constantly continue to develop writing, eventually enough people will read my stuff accidentally where my name might stick out and they'll come find me. Or I make a podcast and I invite successful people on it, and hopefully something will happen.
yeah, yeah,
I'm not able to collect email addresses because who's going to download somebody's 5,000 word story, right?
yeah,
It takes too much time and effort to read a 5,000 word story. And it
yeah.
has to be perfect. It has to be
It
perfect.
it's
Can't
hard,
be any
but
mistakes.
like a lot of it is just getting yourself out there, writing things, finding places to share them to, um, posting on social media, and talking to people, networking with people, showing them that, "Hey, I wrote the story and I can do more." Because a lot of people go to publishers, they're like, My goal is to get published." So they say, have a pitch, they go to a publisher and they say, "Hey, here's my story." And the publisher never replies back because you've never done a story before. They have no idea who you are. They have no proof that you can actually finish a story. And so why would they want to risk their money on you?
Yeah.
So
Have you had a lot of conversations with publishers since?
I have, yeah. So I've applied to a few publishers for like anthologies and short stories, and some I get in, some I don't. And but all of them I've been fortunate enough to like, and I think it's because I have like stuff I've done before, or and I'm applying to people specifically. Like I'll say, "Hey, I applied to a guy from Alterna Comics, is there's a publisher." And I contacted the guy, the editor, and we had a conversation. We follow each other on Twitter, and because I've talked to him, because I know him, because I've produced stuff before, even though I didn't get into the thing I was applying to, he said, "I really like your stuff. Thanks for talking to me. Make sure to contact me in the future with new stories that you're coming out with." So even if you don't get into things, by producing stuff, regardless of the success of it, by talking to people like they're people and not just straight up selling to them, by networking, you build connections, and so now somewhere down the line, I can come in with another story, and maybe that publisher will want to pick up that story. But now they know who I am, whereas before they didn't,
Yeah,
right?
that's the most important part, right?
Yeah,
Before you didn't have a comic, now you do. Before
yeah,
you didn't have a relationship, now you do.
yeah,
Can you poison the well? Yeah, that's the bad thing, right? I mean, reputations are so fragile
yeah,
with this type of
definitely.
stuff, and that's stressful. But
Yeah,
I think you're doing a good job in terms of kind of navigating that. Um, is it stressful? I mean,
yeah,
obviously, not many people put up a Kickstarter and achieve that, right?
yeah,
That's magnificent.
yeah. It definitely can be stressful at times, and at times it feels like you're not making progress at all. Um, but as long as you're keep taking steps, you keep marketing to people, you keep networking with people, you keep producing good, solid stories. Eventually, you'll hit something. Something will stick. You'll find someone who's interested in your stuff. It's just a matter of time, or it's just about when it happens. As long as you just got to keep talking to people, you got to be genuine. It's like a lot. I see a lot of people who go to a publisher and say, "Hey, here's my story," and that's unless it's like a great story, um, they're not going to do anything with it because they don't know you. They haven't interacted with you. So you gotta meet people genuinely, talk to people, um, know their stories, read their stories, and by being genuine, by talking to people enthusiastically about their stuff, eventually you'll get an in. You'll become known by people, but it takes time, and there's a lot of different ways of doing that, and it can be intimidating from people because when I first started, I'm like, "Okay, I gotta do conventions, I gotta go sell on this place, this place, this place, I gotta get a social media account here, I gotta build an email list," and when I first started doing that, building up the how-to guide, building up all the things that I could do, I was like, "Well, I can't do all of these at the same time," but you really don't have to do everything. You just have to
Yep.
do something,
That's beautiful.
and you
That's
have to
exactly how I feel
gradually
about
keep
everything as well. I
creep
mean, you've
doing
got a
things,
list of
yeah,
things to accomplish by the time you die,
yeah,
and you don't know when that's going to be, so stop worrying about it. I mean, Pixar worked on The Incredibles 2 for 14 years. Don't think
yeah,
they started it last year and all they've got a new movie. I guarantee they had it storyboarding for 14 years. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Pixar's model is throw shit at the wall and you know what? Paint around the splatters because eventually we can make art. And they
yeah,
do, and they end up making really good stuff almost 99% of the time. I don't think of one bad Pixar movie that's ever been made. But I mean, that's basically what you do, isn't it? You start with an idea. And if you're
yeah,
brave, you put the idea on paper. And if you're smart, you start molding it and you start changing it and you start editing it. And if you're, free with your ego, you let other people look at it and tell you what they think. And you take their words for, gospel and you change it and you shape it and you make it the best it can be. And then you offer it to people to buy.
mhm,
And that's the ultimate goal. Is your product worth enough for a dude to reach into his back pocket and hand you, a half an hour's worth of work or more? You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
and
impressive.
yeah, and, as long as you're doing your best, you're trying to learn, you're putting your passion into it, someone will be interested in your story, right? There's a kind of person
A story,
who would
a story,
read it.
because I think you got
Yeah,
lucky in terms of this is my story, and people said okay. But
yeah,
some people said this is my story, and they can't get anybody to stop and look at it. So you just got to keep
yeah,
making stories.
yeah,
Don't hit your star. Don't hit yourself to a star that's falling into an ocean.
yeah, and we've been talking a lot about how to, like, make it and how to market and how to be big and successful, but you don't have to necessarily that's not everyone's approach, that's not what everyone's goal is. Like, some people just wanna make a story that they really like and find, like, 20 people that also like it and sell it to them, right? So, it's all about what you want to achieve. If you wanna make it big, um you're gonna have to work hard. But if you want to just write a story that that's straight from your heart and you're gonna sell to whoever's interested, like that's perfectly fine too. Like you don't have to know absolutely everything before you start. It's a
Well, at
learning
the end of the
process.
day,
And
you are looking for that,
yeah,
right? I mean, you're looking for that kind of I mean, I had an author tell me that, writing is kind of guided meditation. You're
Mhm.
allowing the reader to experience a story. You're pushing them onto this journey that really, once you write the story, you have no control over how they're going to kind of anticipate that. I mean, it's very intimate what you're doing with those people. It's not a big group. A con might have 3,000 people in an audience looking at one person tell a story, but individually, everybody's accepting that on a very personal level. And that's what you're doing, is interacting on a very personal level,
Yeah.
one on one. You have to sell that idea, that tweet, that message, that elevator pitch, whatever it's going to be, to
Mhm.
one person a million times, whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You might get 10 people. But what does that mean ultimately? How come you get 100? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At the
Yeah.
same time, though, publishers have all these people working on an assembly line to make a perfect product, and you
Yeah.
don't have a lot of time to do that as an
Yeah.
indie. You've got
Yep.
to turn and burn. There's a guy
Mhm.
named Garrett Robertson, something like
Oh, I
that.
know. Yeah.
You know who he is?
Yeah.
Do you really?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, like, writer guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had
I
him on
think
the
he was
podcast.
in the I think he was in the Discord that we met in.
Oh, really?
I think so.
He does have a Discord, and he's big into that. He likes to. Oh, he was in our channel.
I think so, maybe.
Interesting. I did not know that. I did not like that channel. And there was one person, she was from the Bronx, she just rubbed me wrong. And it's interesting that she rubbed me wrong and I never really had any really real interaction with her.
Mhm.
Just felt like there was no consistency and it felt deliberately like there was no consistency.
Mhm.
But it'd be maybe he was in a different, we were in a writing one together.
Yeah.
And he was
Oh,
too. Oh, that's
I was
fascinating.
in a few. Yeah.
I can't remember what it was
Unless
called.
you're thinking of a different Garrett Robinson, but
This dude turns and burns fantasy novels like
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, just constantly turning and burning fantasy novels.
Yeah.
So that'd be fascinating if he was there. But anyway, I had him on the podcast. Now that's what he said was he never stops. He always is constantly developing content because he's afraid if he stops writing content, people will lose interest and move on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of that, like, I've heard from, like, the people in conventions where they say, like, if you miss a year or 2 of conventions, people will forget about you, and that idea is so frightening to me because it just makes me feel like I gotta keep at this nonstop forever or else I'm gonna fail, and, like, that's scary. That's a scary thought, but, yeah, I don't know, like, there's lots of people out there that just produce at their own rate, and people who are happy doing that, and they say, "Hey, look, this is
Yeah,
the rate that I can afford to put books out. This is the rate that it makes me happy." Because ultimately, that's what it's about, right? If you're not happy writing books, like if you're like, "I have to keep writing, I have to keep writing, I have to do this like 3 books a year," then why are you even doing it, right? Like if it should be something that ultimately you're happy doing,
I
and
think it's all based on budget, right? I mean, you have
yeah,
ultimately what you need to live on. And if you want to make a living doing what you're doing, you have to make that nut. And
yeah,
if you don't, then what do you got to do? You got to find a job. You know what I
yeah,
mean? You're going to starve to death. You have to find some way to support your habit
yeah,
of writing.
yeah.
And what you've done to support your habit of writing is going to publishing.
Mm.
People do that as indies. They go into publishing. They have to put on all those other hats, those really uncomfortable fitting hats,
Yep, definitely.
to make
If
the writing work. And I think ultimately, if you continue down the path that you're going on, what you'll find yourself doing is dictating the writing to other people,
yeah,
potentially, right? I mean, you'll have a big project that you personally are working on. But
that
that's what Garrett Robinson, that dude, whatever his name is, Robertson, is
mhm,
aiming for, is to constantly have work being published in his world so that he can work on those bigger, longer projects and
mhm,
produce epic fantasy as opposed to the short fiction.
yeah, yeah, there's a path that a lot of people take where it's they're indie, they're publishing their own stories, and then all of a sudden they're self-publishing, and then they flip into being a publisher of other people's stories. So they're
Hmm.
still and they're, like, dictating other stories um, yeah, that's definitely it's a lot of people go into writing expecting okay, I'm just gonna be a writer and that's it. And I'm just gonna write and nothing else. And then they discover that there's a whole world out there around the world of
Yeah, you can't
art.
just do that. You
Yeah.
can't just do one thing and say, "Oh, well, I just wrote a story. Who cares?" You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
You need people to care. Now, ultimately, that's what you're doing is making people care with your words and actions and deeds and stuff. I mean, you want to be interesting. You want to write
Yeah.
interesting stuff. You want to be considered talented. I mean, Gore Vidal, I don't know. Do you know who he is? You're a little bit younger.
No, I
I
don't
never
think
read
so.
one word the dude wrote, but I
Yeah.
know who he is. Supposedly, he was a genius with words. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
How ironic that he's a genius with words, and I've never read anything that he wrote.
Mhm.
I mean, it's all about how he sold himself, and I wonder if we live in an age where that's still possible. John Scalzi comes to mind, right? I mean, I've hardly read anything he's written, but I love the dude's Twitter account,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's interesting how the world of social media is so rapidly changing everything and how marketing works and how just how many different industries it's influencing.
right, there've been famous people from Twitter. Like,
Yeah.
wasn't Hilton famous because of her Twitter account?
I I
Was
wouldn't be
Twitter alive
surprised.
back then? I don't even
I
know.
don't know. I don't know.
Kardashians, I mean, is that a social media kind of darling? Justin
Yeah.
Bieber? I
Yeah.
mean, it happens. Why does it happen? Who does it happen for? A lot
Yeah.
of that a few people got burnt because of the Me Too movement in social media. I
Mhm.
mean, if you want to count Chris Hardwick, I mean, that meltdown was
Mhm.
horribly sad, but
Mhm.
there have been other people too. I mean, that makes them legitimate, right? News reported on their sexual misconducts.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a new world. Uh,
It's a new world. I mean, you got to be careful, right? I mean, you don't want to
yeah.
pop, but then you do at the same
Yeah.
time. You don't want
Yeah.
to be that woman on her way to South Africa having said something stupid jokingly to five people, having those
Mhm.
five people repeat it to
Mhm.
millions, and you end up losing your job and your livelihood,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's so easy to burn it all down to the ground when you get to a certain point, or not even. I mean, you could be on your way and then something can go wrong.
Yeah.
This social media landscape that we're playing in is
Yeah,
horribly.
and it's new too. Like the Twitter world, it's within like this generation, and people we still haven't fully learned how to navigate it.
No, it's terribly true, man. This digital, and you can like include the entire digital landscape,
Yeah,
right down to earbuds.
yeah,
These things that I plug into my ear so I can listen to a podcast will pop out, and I tell you, man, it's the most irritating thing when they get caught on like a doorknob or something.
yeah,
All I can think
yeah.
about is my grandfather and how he never had to deal with that aggravation in his entire life.
That is one of the biggest frustrations in my life.
His
There's something
earbuds
about
popping
just like
out,
earbuds getting pulled out.
it
I don't know what
hurts.
it is.
It hurts. It's frustrating. It freaks you out. I mean, your head gets jerked along with it. It's like, my God, dude, what the fuck? And my grandfather never had to deal with that. Like, he was a decent dude. He was, he fought in World War II. He was a mailman, and he never had to get irritated over
Yeah,
earbuds getting yanked out of his ears. And I think that's interesting.
yeah,
It all
yeah,
started because of stupid Steve Jobs. What an asshole, dude.
yeah, yeah. What a jerk making our earphones getting pulled out of our
And he
heads.
gave us computers in our hand, walk around with constant entertainment. Actually, he might have ruined humanity. Who knows? Him and his freaking probably alien DNA.
Yeah,
Anyway, man, we're pushing an hour right now. I don't even know.
yeah,
I have no clue if this was an actual mirage or we'll
yeah,
just count it as an origin. But I really enjoyed the conversation.
yeah. Me too.
I mean, what are you reading right now, comic book wise? Is there anything kind of that you would
Reading?
recommend, or what are you consuming that you would recommend people kind of take a look at?
Yeah, so I've got a lot of different stuff that I've been reading lately. If people are interested in reading kind of like webcomic stuff, I've been reading Skull Kickers, which is kind of like a fun D&D fantasy. Um, there's also something that I've been reading lately. It's called the Manhattan Projects, and that is about like all these like famous scientists and including like Einstein, but it's like the science fiction twist where they all get in like these weird alternate universes and like evil versions of themselves and they get in like weird shenanigans and that's been fun. Um I've also
The
been
Manhattan Projects.
yeah,
That
I'll
sounds
send you a link
fascinating. I'll
to
do so.
um there's Yeah, I've been reading a lot of web comics. There's one called Rice Boy by Evan Dom, and that one's been really interesting to me because the art style is really simple, but it's still really engaging. And I see a lot of people who are saying like, "Oh, I'll never get into comics because I can't draw." But you see some of the comics
Yeah.
like there's Persepolis
Yeah, man,
or
that's the one that came to mind, honestly, is
yeah,
that it's such so simply drawn, but it's not.
yeah,
It's deceptively simply drawn. I mean,
yeah.
it's really
That's
just
true. That's
it's
true.
real it's really gorgeous art.
Yeah,
Simple,
yeah,
gorgeous art, but man, that sucks you through that thing, man.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
I love stuff like that. I love
yeah.
discovering stuff like that because not everything is like that. And
Mhm.
I think this resurgence, like this, not resurgence, because we've never seen anything like this. Comic book world, we almost lost it in the 80s, almost went away. You know what I mean? We almost
Mhm.
didn't have what we have today. But now
Yeah,
there are artists, like you and this other guy that I got to talk to, and that Gabriel Hardman guy with his, what is it, Kinski? That's why I
yeah,
wanted to talk to him. That independent little series was brilliant.
yeah.
How he can create so much stress with those panels, having watched this guy kind of trying to, interact with this dog or whatever. Have you read it?
No, yeah, I haven't read that one yet,
I would
but
check. I would recommend it. I have not finished it, unfortunately.
yeah,
But man, it's brilliant how we can kind of work those emotions up on you. The anxiety level alone, just in panels and some words. Highly
yeah,
recommend it. But yeah, I could talk to him. He's an indie. He's somebody that's just making his own art, and there's a place to put it, and people are looking at it.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I'll definitely that's another one I've been meaning to check out. But, yeah, what else is there? Yeah, there's something for everyone out there. A lot of people, like, think comics and they say, "Oh, superheroes." But there's like, one that I read somewhat recently, it's called The Dregs. I don't know if I mentioned it last time, and it's just about, it was the inspiration for my horror comic Rebirth. It's about like how um, these homeless people are all grouped into this one spot in the city, and it turns out that they're being turned into food, like they're being cannibalized for rich people to eat them, and it's so
that's
such a
great.
dark and like twisting story. But like,
I
yeah,
do.
there's comics out there for everyone.
How did your parents feel about you getting in the comic books? Like, I know you had a good job, and
Yeah.
now you're a comic book guy.
My parents are actually they're really supportive. Like I'm fortunate, but my mom always she's like, "Well, I mean, software development pays well. It pays really well. Make sure you know what you're doing." And I'm like, "Don't worry. If everything goes south, I can always pick up a job somewhere. I know people."
So it would be that easy for you to just get back into software
Well, I
developing.
mean, that it would I would I try to keep up my skills. I do odd and end jobs. I maintain my website I've developed myself. Um, but yeah, I've been thinking for a while about how I could meld comics and software development somehow. But
That was that South Park TV show. Obviously, you're aware of that.
I
They
am
did a
aware.
game called what was it called? God, it was disgusting. And a South Park game, Xbox 360
Oh, the
PC.
Stick of Truth,
Yeah,
that
that's what it
one.
was. And they did a sequel of it. I think it just came out recently or something like
Oh
that.
yeah, the superhero one. It was like,
If you could design games like that, if you could do the F-thens for a game with your comic book, you're probably
yeah,
golden. And then there's also those people that do the Tall Tale? No, Tall Tale.
yeah,
What are they
yeah. The
called?
Telltale games.
Yeah, those are very interesting motion comic type situations. Where
Yeah,
things kind of I mean, it's not hard, right? You can't make your character do anything other than the 4 or 5 options that are available in that particular part of the story.
yeah,
But people love them, right? I mean, they're fascinating games. I've only played one chapter of that.
yeah. Man,
What's it called? The
I
Walking
love
Dead.
the Walking Dead one. When I like the first Walking Dead game. That I love that game.
I think they have Game of Thrones now. I think they're even doing Marvel
Yeah.
stuff or something like that,
Yeah, I
Star
think
Wars
they did
stuff.
a, Guardians of the Galaxy or something, I think.
So it's a fascinating, like that might be the next wave of literature, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah,
Love
it's
that.
uh,
I think TV's dead, honestly. I think television, like we know it, like channels, which
yeah.
unfortunately
I'm
is probably a
surprised
bad
it's
thing for
still
your
around.
area, right? Because that's where
Mhm.
everything in the world is filmed in Vancouver.
Mhm.
Don't you have like the best movie studios in the world there for some reason?
It's I don't know about the movie studios, but everything is filmed in Vancouver for some reason. I think it's cheaper. I think they get, like,
Tax
tax
breaks?
reductions or
'Cause I
yeah,
know
tax breaks.
Vancouver is not cheap.
Yeah, yeah,
It's pretty expensive there.
yeah,
It's supposedly beautiful. I've never made it, north. I
yeah,
lived in Seattle for a long time, but I never made it to Vancouver.
yeah.
But, let's see, man. What can we do for you from this point on? Where can we find you on the World Wide Web?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Evan_Waterman, and you can check out all my stuff at evanjwaterman.com. I've got, like, my comics, I've got the how-to guide there, and, I'm posting my stuff on a new website called Comic Central that I found. There I don't know if you've heard of Comixology, that's where all, like, the digital
Yeah.
comics come from, but there's a new one called Comic Central. It's kinda, like, up and coming, and I've put my stuff up there. Um, that's the one I link to. Um, but yeah, I'm just getting around, gonna be in conventions, and those are my go-tos, the website and the Twitter, and my email list, of course, but
Did you get the kind of the shock of how many people are actually producing work?
yeah. Yeah,
It's
it
amazing,
like
isn't it?
yeah, it's interesting how comics is so small, but at the same time, there's so much out there. There's so many people out just, like, making stuff and making art, but you bring up one name in a room of comic creators, and everyone will know that name. Like, even if it's just some random person. Like, I
So
had
you could burn yourself pretty easily.
yeah, like, I was talking to one of my friends, and he said that he brought up my comic to someone in Eastern Canada, and they knew where I was. They knew me, and
It's
it's
amazing, man.
kinda
You're
like
not regional anymore. You're, an indie now. You're in that
yeah,
community.
it's kinda like
Yeah, man. What?
it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can't even imagine. Like, I mean, you successfully funded a project. I mean, that's really freaking cool.
Yeah, and over the next year, there's gonna be a lot more, I'm hoping. There's gonna be more than men, there's gonna be more, of that I'm doing a kids book and the tattoo one where you get branded for criminals. I'm aiming to do some Kickstarter for that one too.
Did you do any math? Like, I want this much money, and I think that they'll pay this much money, so I'll ask for this much money, or did you just guess?
I talked to people. I think that I figured it like, okay, this is how much I would pay. This is how much the industry average charges for this, and I talked to a lot of people who have done Kickstarters and they found other things. But yeah, I it's all just kind of like a educated guess.
Is it really about the giveaways? Do people really want those giveaways, or is it really just about the comic book?
What do you mean like the free stuff?
Yeah, like your tiers. I mean, I don't remember exactly what you gave away with the various tiers, but I know you had tiers.
Yeah. Let me see if I can pull it up. Um,
But
yeah,
did
I had
people
I had
really get
multiple
excited
tiers.
by that stuff, or
I
did
think
they?
most people are interested in just straight the book, but the fact that you have tiers gives them makes them see like if you just have the book, then then people who are interested in the book will buy the book. But if you have like a lower tier, like I had a digital deluxe where I sent the digital copy of the book, but I also gave you like thumbnails and script and other things. And some people back that. I got like 18 backers at that tier. And it also makes the next tier up look even better. So like as opposed to just having the book, I have a tier below that that has a bunch of stuff, and then the tier with the book has even more. It's even more value. So there's kind of like the marketing side of things, but there are a lot of Kickstarters that just go, "Hey, I'm giving you the book and nothing else." Like you don't
And they
have to
probably
do
fail though, right? I mean,
no, not all of them. Not all. There's a lot of like decent Kickstarters that have just the book.
there's some cool games that come out of Kickstarter too that sound really fascinating.
Yeah.
So did we neglect to mention something that you want to mention before we kick it?
Um, No, I don't think
Whatever
so.
word.
I think if people are interested in hearing more from me, just check out my social media stuff, or I've got the email list on my website. If you want to read any of the stories I've been writing, there's a few free ones up there that you can subscribe to and get deals on my stuff, discount codes, and all that fun stuff. But
Um,
otherwise, keep an eye out over the next year. I'm going to be producing a lot more stuff than I did last year.
any
So
more Kickstarters? Anything like that coming up?
Yeah,
Oh,
there'll
really?
be Kickstarters for More Than Men. There'll be Kickstarters for I'm doing an anthology with some friends, which I will give some more info out on my social media once that actually develops further. And another one off the tattoo one that'll be a Kickstarter, and the kids book. A lot of Kickstarters.
And a children's book?
Yeah, I wanted to do a children's book. The theme of that one is it's called Turn the Page, and the idea is at the end of every page it'll say there'll be a superheroes trying to stop the supervillain, and they need you to
Oh,
turn the page to get them to the next part of the story that'll help
I've
them defeat
seen
the
this
villain.
kind of stuff. This is good
Yeah,
stuff. Like there have
yeah,
been like press the button or don't press the button or
yeah,
don't shake the book or don't yell
yeah,
this.
yeah,
If the monster comes, that's a great idea.
yeah.
Cool
And it's
stuff,
all about
man.
getting the kid directly engaged in the book and interested, and they'll be like, oh, there's people who are trapped under rocks on the next page. You have to turn to save them, and you turn the page, and the superhero saves them, and you're getting engaged in the story, and the kid's reading, and it's just something fun and totally different than what I've done before. But
Well, I'm crossing my fingers, man. You get into the realm of science fiction writing and you need tons of fiction, want to pay me thousands of dollars a story. So keep me in mind. And
I will
always, dude,
definitely.
go ahead.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like I appreciate coming on. It's always a fun time, and I
Yeah,
love
man, I
talking about
really,
this
I
stuff.
really
So
enjoyed this continued conversation and seeing how things kind of go with you and how they're maturing. I mean, it's like you have a project in its infancy. I mean, like when I
yeah,
talked to you on Discord, I mean, there was like, I do comic books. I mean, I'm trying to do this, blah, blah, blah. And you did it. That's pretty cool. I'm liking
yeah,
this. I'm liking that I get to
yeah.
see how it's working out.
Yeah, and yeah, you've been with me since I was first starting, and it was still. I'd like to talk more, chat more about stuff, see how things go in the future.
Don't
Be
hesitate,
fun.
man. It's only an hour of time. I can always
Yeah.
fit you in during the week if you have an hour. I mean, the only difficult part is that it's much earlier for you than it is for me. So
Yeah,
like the
it's
best time for you to do a podcast is like not the best time for me to do a podcast.
yeah, this time worked for me. But
Yeah, but you open invitation, man. Saturdays are usually my go-to day. That's when I book Saturdays and Wednesdays. But if
yeah,
you want
Saturday
to be
works.
on for any reason whatsoever, just send me an email and I'll work something out for you.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate it.
And I'm not quite
Yeah.
sure when this is coming out. Is there anything specific coming up that you want this out for? Otherwise, it's gonna be about 5 or 6 weeks.
That works. Yeah. I get all the stuff I have is in the works now. So it should be after that it'll be coming out for. So 5 weeks is fine down the
Cool.
line.
And don't hesitate to just trickle in emails as you think of stuff that you want to add to the show notes because I'm also interested in the stuff that you're
Yeah.
pointing to, so I can kind of consume
Absolutely.
them.
Yeah,
Cool.
I'll link to a bunch of stuff. Like there's like just coming to my head now. There's a website that has just listed of all the conventions, and you can filter it by area and all that kind of stuff.
Really?
And
Why
yeah,
didn't I know about this? In fact, you're not going to write that down. I'm going to actually put that in my favorites right now. I've been looking
Conosaur.
kind of, I do these convoluted searches and try to find them, and they're hard. They just don't seem to be, aggregated anywhere.
Yeah, there's one Conosaurus.
Conosaurus?
Yeah,
How are you spelling it? Because I didn't do it right.
I linked it to in the chat. I don't know if you could see it.
Oh, okay. I don't have my chat open.
Mm. Yeah, it's like Conosaurus.
C-O-N-O. I will find it. I'm not writing it right. And getting people to spell for me just makes me crazy, Inkster. So it's like, crap, what letter we? I'm not going to ask him to say it again. So
But yeah, there's other
anyway, dude.
places. I'll link all the stuff we talked about. There's like a lot of stuff I've been doing is like anthology projects, which is great for people who are like new into comics. They want just like a way in. It's just a short like 4 to 8 page story, and you just get in. And they're all linked. I don't know if you can find the chat open, but like there's anthology Twitter accounts and all that kind of stuff for people who are new, who are like looking to get some quick stuff in, get some experience. There's lots of good places.
Oh, here's the chat. Okay, I see it now. They've been busy.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, cool. This is the show notes then. Perfect.
Yeah.
almost. Anyway, yeah, anything you want to send me, that's perfect.
Yeah, I will happily link as much stuff as I can.
I thought I looked that up, Conosaurus. It didn't pop up. Might just need the whole website. But cool. I've been looking for something like that. I might be going. I swear to God, I want to press pass. I think that'd be just fantastic to be able to go
Yeah,
to all
that would
these
be
things for free.
awesome. That'd be awesome.
And be not shuttled around to the various panels, but maybe I can actually do some interviews. Like they'll say, "Do you want to be on this? Talk to Tom Cruise line." Like, hell yeah, dude. Ask him all about Scientology. Yeah,
Well,
I'll
I
get on the
wouldn't do
news.
that given your history with them.
Podcaster fights Tom Cruise over
That'll get you views.
That'll get me lots of views. Be that guy, Matt Lauer, just piss him off. Scientology sucks, and spit on him a little bit. See what happens. Actually, I hear the guy's really cool until you piss him off. Then he calls the cops on you. Like, he will not fight you. He'll just have you arrested. So that's not cool. We need like fisticuffs or something, and no charges, because I don't want to go to jail. That would suck.
Yeah.
I'm paying attention. I like what you're doing, so good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. And I'll let you know if I have any more links or interesting stuff that it's good to share with people. Yeah.